So welcome once again to our adult Sunday school class for Sunday, January 21st. And we are going through the journey from the end of the patriarchs with Joseph and Job to the Exodus, and we are counting down to the birth of Moses. So we are in Exodus chapter 1. And we are about the year 1545 BC. We are seeing that at this point in time, after things have been hunky-dory for the Israelites in Egypt, not the case anymore. There's a shift, there's a change. And what we're seeing is when we follow David Roll, Egyptologist here, his new chronology, making some corrections to the official Orthodox chronology timeline, his new chronology shows that these events in Egypt and the rest of the world line up exactly with what the Bible says. It's a perfect match and fit. And this is coming from an agnostic who didn't set out to prove the Bible right. He just recognized unexpectedly that there are problems with the accepted chronology, and there are some huge problems. So we see here in Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. You can hold your place there. And I'll just share one verse in Acts chapter 7, verse 18. Stephen, when he is on trial and asked to give a defense, he relates the spiritual behind the scenes of their history. And he mentions this in Acts chapter 7, verse 18. Until another king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. So we pick up in Exodus 1, verse 9. Hey, Robinsons, hello, hello. Happy to have you with us here. Go there and go there and there. Cool. So continuing Exodus 1, verse 9. And he said to his people, behold, the people of the sons of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them. Otherwise, they will multiply, and in the event of war, they will also join those who hate us and fight against us and depart from the land. So they appointed taskmasters over them to oppress them with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied and the more they spread out, so that they dreaded the sons of Israel. The Egyptians used violence to compel the sons of Israel to labor, and they made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks, and at all kinds of labor in the field, all their labors which they violently had them perform as slaves. So this is quite a turn of events here. So let's take a look at the snapshot of time we're talking about here. Again, we're looking at 1545 BC. The Israelites have been in Egypt for 116 years now. 116 years of things going great. So let's take a look at some things that we have to help us understand the times. One thing I have is right here, talking about these Israelites. We have mentioned some of these folks by name, and we're told that the population grows and people are marrying and having kids. One such example we're told about in chapter 2, verse 1. Let's see here. Let's do this. It's thinking about it. There we are. Ta-da. I just had to wait for it. Here it comes. So we're told that Amram married Jochebed. So who is Amram and who is Jochebed? We have Abraham married to Sarah, Isaac married to Rebekah, Jacob married to Leah, and one of their 12 was Levi, from whom we have the Levites. The Levites have 3 divisions through the sons of Levi: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Levi had a daughter named Jochebed, while Kohath had a son named Amram who married his aunt Jochebed. Amram had brothers Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. So we have that. So I thought kind of a visual will kind of help us to see, instead of just throwing a bunch of names out there, see the relations and the connections. We also have
Wait, was he supposed to marry him then?
I don't know whose permission he asked, but please do.
They had so many children. And this so long, they had so many children, it is very possible that Amram was older than his Aunt Jochebed.
Nope. He wasn't.
Well. You didn't have to say that.
It's a nice thought, but Amram was about 46 when he married his Aunt Jochebed, who was about 54. So there's only about 8 years difference between the two.
So it might have been for,
Yeah.
if she was older and didn't have a husband, it might have been for practical reasons.
Mhm.
Right?
They didn't have back, come back.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just saying, when did it become not okay to marry your family members?
By the time of the Exodus, remember the Exodus population was like 2.5 million. And so there's plenty of Hebrew fish in that sea.
People.
And so, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So keep in mind too, with timing and the spread of sin and the sin infection and its damaging consequences, the corruption of the DNA. This is why the more diverse our spouses are from us, the better our offspring are. Because if I marry someone who's a very close relative, keeping in mind that under Adam and under Noah, we're all related. But if I marry someone who's a close relative to me who has very much the same DNA, then my wife has the same weaknesses I do and the same strengths I do. Meaning our children come out the same as we do. They don't have the benefit of someone whose DNA is more complementary, where their strengths overcome my weaknesses and my strengths overcome their weaknesses, and the children are better off. And so there's that. And so with more people and more time spread, we have more corruption of the DNA, so more problems with closer relatives marrying each other and results that happen, birth defects and things like that. But again, as time spreads too and population grows, we have more to choose from, less need for that, et cetera, et cetera.
But yet we tend to marry within our own groups,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
Yeah, very
kinda
much so.
like who we hang out in school with.
Yeah.
Right? You know, the
Yeah.
jocks hang out over here, the band kids hang over here, the nerds hang over here,
Mhm.
because we have things in common, which I guess you could argue would definitely weaken your exposure,
Yeah.
right? So I guess, but that's just kind of what we tend to do. Nobody wants to hang out with somebody that's gonna argue every little thing with them, or not, go to the same movies with them or listen to the same music. I mean, we don't naturally say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go for that one right there, when it's so different from us. We tend to want to stay in our comfort zones, and I guess with family members, you're really in your comfort zone. But
Or you're really not, depending on the family.
Yeah. But that's interesting, though, you mentioned the ages too, because.
And that's my ballpark best estimation.
If they were older though, anyway, why weren't?
Yeah.
That's interesting that there wasn't, other spouses.
Mhm. We do know from the Bible record that Kohath's daughter, Levi's daughter Jochebed was born in Egypt. We are told that specifically. Levi was, of course, not born in Egypt. He was with the 75 who all came together in Egypt. And so she was born after that. Of course, he would be born a later generation after that. So, but yeah, their proximity in age, just because they're a different generation, that doesn't mean their ages aren't close. There are many of us in this church who have had aunts and uncles who are closer to us in age than brothers and sisters. And so these are just the family dynamics that happen.
My granddaughter, Sean, and her uncle lived 3 months younger than her.
There you go. Uncle who's younger, brother Peter.
Sometimes even like in marriage and they break up and then they get divorced, they marry somebody else.
Yep.
And the kids from there, for the first marriage, they're teens. So the father has marries somebody else because of divorce, and then he has no kids. They're younger, so
Right.
They're the first kids are older and
Yeah. They're technically the same generation, but there's a big gap in their ages.
They can have children, which could be cousins, and then
Yeah.
they're older and it works out. And then next thing you know, you have an uncle that's younger than, you're like,
Yeah.
you're my uncle, yes.
Sister Ashley and her cousin in Bakersfield, that she never knew she had a cousin in Bakersfield of all places coming out from the South. Their ancestor is the same guy, but but Ashley and her cousin, they come from different moms of the different wives of the same guy who had different marriages. Yeah.
And so different generations, because my cousin is 80-something years old. And I'm 50-something, so she's 30 years older than me. Because he was married 3 times and had 20-some odd children between these 3 wives. So
And this is a Civil War veteran.
yeah, so, and so a lot of those fellas, when they came back from the war, and
Baby boom.
women died in childbirth. I think one of his wives actually died in childbirth, So a lot of those fellas, though, they were in their 70s and 80s, and they were having children with younger women.
But enough about Tony Randall. No.
Tony Randall.
Also like, to adoption,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're, to adoption, then it's different like that too, because then they're adopted, they're like, okay, well, it's not the same bloodline.
Right.
If they marry back into their, like, maybe they've been adopted.
Or we saw like what happened with Judah and his sons with Tamar. Okay, the whole practice of, okay, well, brother dies, then the next brother comes in and has the first kid to honor the deceased brother.
Some states let cousins marry,
Yes.
still,
Mhm.
so I don't know if that's, frowned upon, much, or what. but-
So this wonderful image here comes to us from that book, All the Genealogies of the Bible. So kind of help to visualize and piece things together. Because even for me, just throwing out a bunch of names is kind of, I like visuals, and I can't visualize on my own. I like to see a visual.
What do you have there? That's
This is the genealogy. This is the time. This is the ancestry. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Kohath, Amram. Amram married his father's sister, Jochebed. Amram and Jochebed will be the parents of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses.
information.
Oh, it's a fabulous book.
Other than this, and this thing, where you read, and I don't know which one it is, but they said you married this one, and then this family married this one, and it goes on and on and on. I'm like,
Oh, we're going to talk about some of that.
I mean,
Right.
I don't even know if they're talking about people or because their names are hard.
Yes.
They're not like our American names here.
See, we have the benefit of last names, so we can have simple first names.
Yeah.
Which Eric are you talking about? Oh, Eric Cooper. Okay. Yeah,
Excuse me.
exactly. And even these folks end up having names repeated. And so it's sometimes hard to keep track which one we're talking about. Another example I want to show us, I mentioned this before earlier. Let that refresh. From the line, hey there, from Joseph down to Joshua. Joshua is a descendant of Joseph. So here we have Jacob and Rachel. Here's Joseph with his Egyptian wife, Asenath. His Ephraim and Manasseh are the sons of Joseph. Ephraim had some kids who ended up getting killed, and then had another family over here, had a daughter, and then these sons down here. So from Joseph to Ephraim to Beriah, Repha, Resheph, Tela, Tahan, Ladan, we are now in the lifetime of Ammihud, making our way down to Joshua.
So, why does it split off like that?
Different families. He had one family here and another family here.
But it doesn't show the wives.
It doesn't show the wives, yeah.
Okay, that's why.
Yeah, so down here, with Shuthala, there was Bered, Tahath, Elida, and Tahath. See, 2 Tahaths right there. And so, yeah, so we've got 2 different trees branching out here. But Joshua will come down this line right here. So we're getting closer and closer to Joshua as well. So when Exodus 1:7 tells us the sons of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly, multiplied, became exceedingly mighty, so that the land was filled with them. Yeah. Yes, it did. So here in this year 1545 BC, when Egypt has a new pharaoh in the south here, Sobekhotep III, that rises up, doesn't acknowledge Joseph, and says, we got to do something about these Israelites. what we see in the records of Egypt matches perfectly with what we see in the Bible. In fact, if you want to, you can do like I did, and right next to Exodus 1:8, the new king who arose, you can pencil in there Sobekhotep III. That's the Pharaoh we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yep.
You want to spell it?
Yeah, right.
Sobek, Sobek, which means crocodile. Hotep, Hotep, which means is content. They like their crocodiles content because they come out of the Nile. And if crocodiles in the Nile are happy, then their agriculture is happy. Yes. Never smile at a crocodile. Okay, so we've got this guy, Pharaoh Sobekhotep III, and he is in, let's see, number 30, slide number 33. He is right here, ruling out of Ichitawe. And I'm going to pull back out for just a second and make sure we're seeing that project, that project, that project, that project, and that project. Okay, there we go. Let's go back to this project. And go back to the capital for this new pharaoh, right over here, Ichitawe. Let me do one more thing. There's a story behind that one that we'll get to when the time comes. Okay, so here we are. Going to Ichitawe, which is right in this area. So here's the land of Goshen. Here's the Avaris. Here's where the Israelites are, originally called the Roarti. And so you've got this area of Egypt, then you got this area of Egypt, and Sobekhotep III is from this area. He's got his capital right here at Ichitawe. So 1545 BC, again, the Israelites have been in Egypt for 116 years now. This is the Pharaoh that does not know Joseph, does not recognize or acknowledge him. We're in Middle Bronze Age 2A. Over in China, we've got Yangji, who's the emperor of the Shang Dynasty. And here in Egypt, we've got this guy, Sobekhotep III, the Pharaoh who does not know or acknowledge Joseph. And we are acting a little slow here. My apologies for that. Let's do this. Let's just ignore you and go over here. Close you. We want 1, we want 5, we want 4, we want 6, we want 2, we want 3, and we want you. Okay, there we go. And let's open you again. Absolutely. Yes, it did. And that is why after the time of Joseph, with the famine that was caused by the Nile, that's why Pharaoh started having Sobek for crocodile in their very names, because they wanted to keep their crocodile gods content. So again, he's over here. So we've got, again, in China, Yangji of the Shang Dynasty. We've got this guy, Pharaoh Sobekhotep III, is the Pharaoh, and that's him in the center here, facing one god, then here facing another god. This is the guy, Sobekhotep III, the new king who arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph, in Exodus 1:8. So we've got him. We have over in Assyria, let's go over to 33. So if we zoom out, go across over here. There we are. So there's the Persian Gulf. So over in Assyria, their last days, we've got King Ismi-Dagan I. Down here in Larsa, we've got Rimsin, who's their last king. Up here in Babylon, we've got Hammurabi, who's got that famous law code. Back Hammurabi. This is that guy right here with his famous law code that is sitting on top of. Right there. And over in Byblos, back to this. Byblos is right up here in Phoenicia, Lebanon area, right there. Byblos has King Yantin-Amu. And up here in the center in Mari, we have King Yasma-Adad. He was the whiny kid complaining about his father to his brother. And they're all telling him to grow up. So let's see, over here in Mari. And I really like the imagery from here. There's the remains of it there. I just love their culture and their artistry. I like those big eyes. Yeah. And of course, the Mad Hatter hat there. What was it, 10/7 or whatever it was? Yeah. So those are the powers that be at this time of this rise of this new Pharaoh over the south of Egypt. So looking in the line of Christ, we have Judah's grandson, Hezron, would be about 116 years old right now. His son Ram would be about 58. So we've got in Egypt, this new guy down here, while most of the Israelites are up here. They're all spread out throughout Egypt, but they're mostly concentrated up in the good land there of Goshen. So Sobekhotep III, he's the first of this new, more powerful line of kings. We're still in the 13th dynasty. They succeed over the weak rulers of the early 13th dynasty. He comes to the throne almost 50 years after the death of Joseph, when the memory of Joseph would have been dimmed by the passage of time. But that phrase, who did not know Joseph, probably means he did not know Joseph when Joseph was alive, rather than him not having a clue about Joseph. There's still Joseph's home, Joseph's pyramid burial chamber and his statue. So, and we've got all these Israelites all over the place. So the influence of Joseph is clear. So there's no denying Joseph. He probably just didn't know him in his lifetime. So they've got this growing threat. In fact, this is referred to as the Israelite problem that they've got now. Now in Exodus 1:11, it says they appointed taskmasters over them to oppress them with hard labor. They built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses. That one verse is the cause of all sorts of problems. Because it says they built the city of Ramses. The official accepted record is that Ramses the Great II was the Pharaoh of the Exodus. But if you go back to Genesis 46:11, in the time of Joseph, it says the Israelites moved into the land of Ramses. Well, in the time of Joseph, everyone's clear there's no such Ramses yet. Everyone recognizes that that name Ramses was just an update. As the Bible is being copied later and later in time, the name is just being updated to what the name is now. So everyone accepts that. The fancy word is an anachronism. It's contrary to the time that things were taking place. Everyone accepts that for Genesis 46:11, that they refuse to apply the same standard to Exodus 1:11. There's no reason why this can't be an anachronism just like Genesis 46. In fact, when you do the math and work things out, it pretty much has to be. During this time that the Israelites are here, the city is not called Ramses. In fact, let's see here. Right there. And yeah, we'll refresh. So the reference to Ramses is an anachronism. The real Israelite city of bondage was here, Avaris. Ramses is built on top of it much later on, during the time of Pharaoh Ramses II. He's in the New Kingdom. We're in the second intermediate period after the Middle Kingdom, before that New Kingdom. So this is where the Israelites actually are in the cities they're building. And what we see here is there absolutely was a large slave population from Western Asia, Asiatics, the continent of Asia, so from Canaan and from Syria, that was living here in the Delta and the Nile Valley during the 13th dynasty. The city mentioned Pithom and Pi-Ramses. The other one's just a little north of this one. So they built this city at or near the place where the later royal estate of Ramses II was constructed. They did not build this later city. So what do we see here when we dig and discover here? Anthropological examination. Fancy word for examining the humanity, the bones, the life. the skeletal remains that we have of these folks from the Asian continent buried here at Avaris during this time, what do we see? These skeletons show signs of ill health and malnourishment. Life expectancy among these people on average is as low as 34 years. We saw last week the Brooklyn papyrus that's in the Brooklyn Museum now that comes from this time frame. Out of this is a record of slaves being transferred, slave servants. Out of a total holding of this one estate from Thebes that amounted to 79 domestic slaves, no fewer than 45 out of those 79 bore Canaanite or Semitic names. Between 50 to 75% of the Delta slave population during this 13th dynasty came from Canaan and Syria, that Asiatic area. So they weren't the only slaves they had, but they were a vast majority of them. So this new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, Sobekhotep III. So he seizes power throughout the Nile. So let's go back to, we can go back to that one. We'll stop right there. So he seizes power all up and down the Nile here. So these southern rulers are now again forcing a division. What happens is the pharaohs who were up here, who had dominated Egypt's political landscape for the past 66 years. And again, these have Hebrew bloodlines in them. So these pharaohs, Asiatic pharaohs, they're forced to retreat back up here to their summer residence at Avaris. Here they had a short-lived independent kingdom. It did have some influence because they up here were able to exploit the trade links with Canaan and with northern Mesopotamia and with the Mediterranean here with Turkey and Greece. So they had that advantage going for them. So all the goods from those areas had to come through them down to Sobekhotep III and those folks down south. So they were able to have some influence for a little bit. But this guy, Sobekhotep III, he only reigned for 3 years. But during that 3-year reign, that's when the Israelites and those up here were first enslaved in their large numbers. The Egyptians, the native Egyptians, had finally had enough. Property seized, livestock confiscated by royal decree. Those who were from this area, the Canaanites, the Israelites, who lived down here in the royal court there at the capital of Igitawi, if they swore absolute allegiance to Pharaoh and the upper Egyptian state here, they were permitted to keep their offices, but they were under close scrutiny, by their native Egyptian masters. The end result is that in this devastating coup, Egypt has taken back control of its destiny, and it has found itself awash with slaves to do its bidding. Again, according to surviving documents like that Brooklyn papyrus, as many as 50% of the domestic servant population in the Nile Valley here at this time bore Semitic names, including Israelite names like Menahem, Issachar, Asher, and Shiphrah. 2 of those are the names of the tribes, Issachar and Asher. Shiphrah is actually the name of one of the Israelite midwives that we'll read about in a little bit. Sobekhotep III, by the way, he had 2 wives of his own. So after that happens, we now have a new king over in Mari, who will actually be their last king. Let's do a refresh here. His name is Zimri-Lim. Now, he was actually forced to flee when his father was assassinated by his own servants during a coup. But he eventually was able to make it back and rebuild. He actually, over in Mari, so let's see here, 1, 5, 4, 6, 2, 3, and you. And let's go to you. So Zimri-Lim, right over here. This guy. This is showing him being established as king. So Zimri-Lim, he extended the royal palace, possibly the largest at the time, had over 260 rooms on the ground level, and certainly was the envy of the other kings. but that palace ended up later getting destroyed by Hammurabi of Babylon. Before that, he and Hammurabi were getting along. He helped Hammurabi of Babylon with his wars against Elam and Larsa and Eshnunna. Zimri-Lim lent troops to Hammurabi's campaigns. The two were in touch extensively through their diplomats, but it looks like they've never actually met in person. But here's the problem that happened. After Elam was defeated, there was no outside force to be kind of a buffer between all these others who are just kind of on the edge. And so the alliance between Zimri-Lim of Mari and Hammurabi of Babylon, that alliance kind of deteriorated after Babylon conquered Larsa. Hammurabi then conquered and sacked Mari. The city may have surrendered without a fight, despite their alliance that they had before. After that, we have no more record of Zimri-Lim, so it's presumed he got killed. But what we do know about his personal life, we have tablets that were preserved from that state capital in the archive. He married Shibtu, who is a princess of Yamkad, that is over in Syria by Aleppo. He's known to have had at least 8 daughters through various wives. Several of his daughters married local town rulers. 2 became priestesses. We have letters that he wrote between him and his daughters. And they show that Zimri-Lim of Mari, he thought highly of women, considered them competent at making decisions. The other thing we know about this guy, he was known for his lavish banquets that had delicacies such as chickpea salad, fried locusts, and a large amount of desert truffle were served. So that's that guy. Yeah, feel free to look that one up. I have not yet. I was kind of stuck on the fried locust myself. Yeah. Yeah. Here's John the Baptist saying, you can fry those? Yeah. And this brings us to our next event in the Bible. We have in the line of Christ, the birth of Amminadab. So we've got Abraham, who's the 20th generation, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and through the incident with Tamar, we have Perez, then Hezron, then Ram, and now Amminadab. Amminadab is the 27th generation of Adam. He is the 37th generation, going backwards from Christ through Joseph, and we have other births of this time. So what I'm going to do, what I've discovered, just as we were talking at the beginning of class, how they might be the same generation, but born and active in different times because of all these different things going on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share this line of generation because we're going through the whole Bible. So we have to get to those names, but I'm doing it just one layer at a time. So we're not kind of overwhelmed. We're not going to read 1 Chronicles 1 through 9 straight through. And so, but what we're going to start with is actually the book of Ruth. If you go to Judges and hang a right, Ruth is the very next book. Yeah. So go to Judges, and right at the end of Judges, you'll see the book of Ruth. And we're going to go to the last chapter, chapter 4. Judges, Ruth, chapter 4. Yep, if you hit Samuel, it went too far. Ruth, chapter 4, 1 verse, verse 19. The book ends giving the genealogy. It's the genealogy of Christ that Ruth will become a part of. Ruth 4, verse 19, and we can see it right here. Ruth 4:19, Hezron fathered Ram, and Ram fathered Amminadab. So that's where we are here at about 1544 BC. Ram is about 59 years old at the time he fathers Amminadab. Now, I'm going to share for you and get the pain out of the way here. Some of these other folks that were from the 27th generation, but as we see with what we read, they were a bit later on in time. Some of these, the events that we're going to read don't happen until after the Exodus. But I want to get across this generation. I still haven't finalized putting a date to every single verse in the Bible, which is something I'm working on.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're going to just skim across these generations. So these would be, so Judah's son, grandson, great-grandson, great-great. So we are talking, this generation is the great-great-grandsons of the 12 tribes of Israel. So, two greats. So we've got Judah, so the 12 tribes of Israel, son, grandson, great-grandson, great-great. So the great-great-grandsons of the 12 sons of Jacob. So here we go. First Chronicles chapter 2, starting in verse 18. First Chronicles 2:18. Now Caleb, the son of Hezron, had sons by Azubah his wife, and by Jerioth, and this is in the line of David here. And these were the sons, Jesher, Shobab, and Ardon, different branches coming off to the sides here. When Azubah died, Caleb married Ephrath, who bore to him Hur. This is a different Caleb than the one who is with Joshua. First Chronicles 2, that was verses 18 and 19. Now I'm going to move on to verse 22. First Chronicles 2:22. Segub fathered Jair, who had 23 cities in the land of Gilead. Well, this is after the Exodus. But Geshur and Aram took the villages of Jair from them, with Keneth and its villages, 60 settlements. All of these were the sons of Mashir, the father of Gilead. After the death of Hezron and Caleb Ephrathah, Abijah, Hezron's wife, bore to him Asher, the father of Tekoa. So he died while his wife was pregnant. But that's again, this generation, but it's going to be later on after the Exodus. Skip down to verse 48, and we see that Maacah, Caleb's concubine, gave birth to Sheber and to Hannah. So that's the 27th generation there. Now we flip over to chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 2. This is again one of the lines of Judah. Rhea, the son of Shobal, fathered Jahath, and Jahath fathered Ahumai and Lahab. These were the families of the Zorathites. All right, skip down to verse 5. Asher, the father of Tekoa, had 2 wives, Helah and Nara. Nara bore to him Ahuzam, Hefer, Tamini, and Hahashtari. These were the sons of Nara. The sons of Helah were Zereth, Izhar, and Ethnan. Kaz fathered Anub and Zobahah, and the families of Arhel, the son of Harun. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother named him Jabez, saying, because I gave birth to him in pain. Now Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, oh, that you would greatly bless me and extend my border, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from harm so that it would not hurt me. And God brought about what he requested. That obviously happened after the Exodus. But this 27th generation. Chelub, the brother of Shuha, fathered Mahir, who was the father of Eshton. Eshton fathered Beth-Ephra and Paseah, and Timnah, the father of Nahash. These are the men of Rekah. All righty, we skip down to verse 21. The sons of Shelah, the son of Judah. Let me pause right here. Remember Judah and Tamar. Judah's son died. And so he said, okay, Onan, you go marry Tamar. Onan married Tamar, he died. He had one more son, Shelah, and he did not give his last son, Shelah, to Tamar. Well, Shelah ended up getting married later on and having a family. This is that family now. Yeah. So he was denied Tamar, but he got a family anyway. So verse 21, the son of Shelah, the son of Judah, were the father of Lekah, and Lada, the father of Marashah. Families of the house of the linen workers at Beth-Sheba. So he named his firstborn after his older brother who died. And Joachim, the men of Kozeba, Joash, Seraph, who ruled in Moab, Jashubi, Lahem, and the records are ancient. I bet they are. These were the potters, the inhabitants of Netaim and Gedera. They lived there with the king for his work. So this is again, we see this generation, what would happen with them later on. Last chapter of First Chronicles, chapter 7. Again, doing a cross section of this 27th generation here. Going down the line of Issachar. So we have First Chronicles 7, verse 3. The son of Uzzi was Izrahiah. The sons of Izrahiah were Michael, Obadiah, Joel, and Isaiah. All 5 of them were chief men. We skip down to verse 10 with the descendants of Benjamin. The son of Jediel was Bilhan. And the sons of Bilhan were Jush, Benjamin, Ehud, Chenahan, Zethan, Tarshish, and Ahishar. All righty. Skip down to verse 14 for the line of Joseph's son Manasseh. The sons of Manasseh were Azriel, to whom his Aramean concubine gave birth. She also gave birth to Mashir, the father of Gilead. Skip down to verse 16. Makah, the wife of Mashir, gave birth to a son. She named him Peresh. The name of his brother was Sheresh, and his sons were Ulam and Racham. And then we skip down finally to verse 31 for the descendants of Asher. 1 Chronicles 7:31. The sons of Beriah were Heber and Malchiel, who was the father of Berzath. Heber fathered Japhlet, Shomer, and Hotham, and their sister Shua. The sons of Japhlet were Pasash, Bimhal, and Ashvath. These were the sons of Japhlet. The sons of Shemer were Ahi and Roga and Jehuba and Aram. The sons of his brother Helam were Zophah, Imnah, Shelish, and Amal. So that is the Old Testament record of the 27th generation. We're going to close in the Gospel of Luke. Luke chapter 3. With the genealogy of Jesus. Luke chapter 3. The genealogy in Luke is different from the genealogy in Matthew, and we'll talk about that as we get closer to that. So Luke chapter 3, we have in verse 33, going again through these genealogies. In Luke chapter 3, verse 33, we are told, Luke 3:33, son of Amminadab, the son of Ram, the son of Hezron, the son of Perez, the son of Judah. Now, many of your Bibles might say in Luke 3:33, the son of Amminadab, the son of Admin, the son of Ram. Do a lot of your Bibles say that? Have Admin in there in between Ram and Amminadab? Yeah. That guy, Admin, is nowhere in the Old Testament. In fact, this is pretty much recognized that this was a copier error or a clerical error, or as I would like to call it, this was an admin error. So yeah, so that name's probably not there in the line. So we have here, God is faithful in preserving his line while Egypt has now turned on the Israelites under Pharaoh Sobekhotep III in 1545 BC. We have the Lord's line being preserved. We have from the 20th generation, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Perez, Hezron, Ram, and now we have the birth of Amminadab in 1544 BC. He's the first generation born into slavery. And so we will see that continue from there. So Judah's grandson Hezron, is about 117 years old at the time that his grandson Amminadab is born. He's about 117. Ram is about 59 when he fathers Amminadab. And the bonus question, how old was Amminadab at the time of his birth? Anyone? There we go. Okay. Y'all are paying attention. You're on point. Cool. So with that out of the way, that 27th generation, does anyone have any thoughts, any reactions, any questions to these things we have looked at this morning with the change in fortunes in Egypt and the rise of the pharaohs against the Israelites and the enslavement of them? All good? All right, appreciate your time and attention. We will go ahead and stop our screen share and stop our recording and get ready to go before the Lord in song.